Hey there guys, so in this training we're going to go over how to select a profitable niche market for you to build your personal brand in and to basically start hitting those 10k plus months that we talk about. And the reason that we pretty much insist that you do this is because, well, it's the correct way to build any business really, but our big advantage is that so few of your competitors actually do this. I think we all know that, most brokers out there are generally struggling, and part of the reason is because they try and work with anyone and everyone. And a lot of the time, they just end up being really busy, just being busy, right? Funding no deals and spinning their wheels. And the simple fact is that ain't us. That's not how we do things. We're here because we want to make money, and we want to be hitting at least 10k a month. So the reason that we niche is because you're going to have a much easier time attracting clients if you become the expert within that niche, and are basically perceived that way by your clients, because you're going to be focused on that one market with effectively just one type of business. And if you do that, you're going to have a much easier time getting these guys funding consistently. Why is that? Well, it's because they will generally all have the same types of problems and challenges within their businesses. And therefore, when they need funding, it will be for similar reasons, which means that, again, from your perspective, they're going to need the same types of products, which means that the criteria to fund them will more often not be the same, and the funding amounts are going to be similar. So you see where I'm going with this, right? It basically becomes a case of rinse and repeat. It becomes very, very simple. The more people that you help, the more you fund, the more they tell their network of contacts. A lot of the time, their network of contacts tends to be similar business types within the same niches. And then obviously they recommend those people into you, and the more you fund, and it just kind of starts to snowball. But it gets better, right? Because by niching, once you have all of your methods and your systems dial in, you can conserve a ton of time and actually scale things a lot faster. So this is all pretty cool, right? And in this training, what we're going to do is we're going to go through a number of different things covering this subject. We're going to cover basically to niche or not to niche. That is the question. We're going to go over the pros and the cons of doing this, and we're going to sort of focus on what people typically think about here. And I'm going to address each one of those concerns in turn, with a view basically just to dispel that myth completely. I want you to be very confident that this is absolutely the right thing to do for you. We're going to cover how to select the ideal niche for profitable results. I'm going to show you the exact process that we will use here so that you can be confident you have the right niche to go in there and get leads and tons of deals funded. We're going to show you which death trap niches to avoid. These are the types of markets that they may even initially seem exciting, but will just have you spinning your wheels over time and ultimately either get no funding at all or very low volume. And we're also going to go and show you how to know for certain that you've selected the right niche. There's as you go through this process, how can you know for certain that the market you've chosen is the right one for you? There's a lot of stuff that we need to go through. So we're going to focus on that and help you save a ton of time. We're then also going to go over, what to do to get the most out of your niche so that you can actually start scaling things fast. And when we talk about scale, if you don't know, it's basically growing, right? We're going to do some basics to build a foundation to start revenue coming in. But once that's happening, we want to build on that revenue, right? So if you're making 10k a month, I'm pretty sure most of you will want to make 20, 30, 40, 50, and so on. So it's important that we do this in such a way that we can scale those results and predictably as well. So with regards to this, there's going to be a couple of things that you really do need to know and that you do need to focus on, really to get these results in the short term, but also more importantly in the long term, because that's really where the huge profitability is. So, let's take a quick look at the common questions when it comes to niching. And as I say, we're going to answer all of these in detail. But the first question that we always get is, should I even bother doing this in the first place? And there are a number of concerns that typically come up for people asking that questions. And they're mostly centered around the idea that, if you do niche, if you focus in one particular market, you're going to be missing out on all of these other opportunities that are out there in these other marketplaces. And the thinking being that, by focusing on a certain type of business, you're just going to limit all these other businesses that you could work with, right? You're not going to have as much opportunity. Therefore, it's going to affect the amount of money that you can actually make, as opposed to kind of going broad and working with all these different business types. So we're going to kind of go into that and answer that in a bit more detail. And the next one is what do I do if I pick the wrong niche? You know, you pick this niche, you've gone through this process, you pick this niche, you spend all of your time and your energy going after the market, trying to figure out how best to connect with people. And the thing is, you know, it can be worrying that you're not going to be profitable and that you're not going to actually benefit from this in the long term. So we're going to address this in detail and basically show you how it's pretty much impossible to pick the wrong niche. We're also going to basically address this one. It's like, you know, it feels like I don't know enough to pick the right niche. And that's very, very common, especially when you're coming into this market for the first time. You know, you kind of, it's like, there are a lot of things to consider when picking different niches. There are all these different factors that sort of come into play. And it's common that, you know, you can feel like you just don't have the right information to be able to make any sort of decision with confidence. And so we're going to cover that one as well. So we're going to basically give you the confidence to actually demonstrate that you probably know a lot more than you think about picking the right niche. And then niching will limit the businesses that I can work with. And I think we've just kind of talked about this briefly, but there are a couple of things that you really do need to realize about this. And I'm going to demonstrate why it's really the wrong way to be approaching your business as a whole. Okay. So, you know, let's take a deeper look at why bother niching in the first place. Well, the first thing to say is that by not niching, you're actually going to attract way less clients, or a ton of clients that might well want your help. And that can be very misleading because you'd be thinking, oh, I'm getting all these great results because all these people want to talk to me. But the reality is you're not going to get any of them funded, or very few of them funded. You know, and we only have to take a look at the wider market now to see that, you know, there's tons of brokers out there experiencing this very thing. And a lot of them not even aware that it's a thing, right? They've got these blinkers on thinking that this is just how the market is, but it's not. And this is the reason you have brokers shopping around for help with funding a deal. You're probably in some groups yourself, and you know, you see these people posting in these groups saying, hey, I've got these deals, can anyone advise me or help me? And then you sort of see every man, woman and his dog saying, hey, I can help you, you know. And I'm not saying that some of these don't get funded, but on the whole, you know, just think about how many of those ultimately just waste their time and get nothing. How much time have they invested in that to ultimately get nothing out of it? Because, you know, we only get paid when we fund deals. So this is part of the reason they're getting tons of declines, because either the deals themselves are duds and they just don't know enough about the market to really understand if it's one that can be funded or not, or the lenders that they have just aren't that great. So not niching really just turns you into a jack of all trades and a master of none. And I've never really seen a very successful jack of all trades, right? I don't know if you have, you know, proved me wrong, but I personally, in my life, I've never seen that happen. And this is exactly what happens when you broadly try to work with every business there is out there. But the thing is as well, it goes deeper, because not niching also creates what I call transactional client relationships. And again, this is what a lot of brokers have, you know, when what we actually want are what I call consultative value-driven relationships. These are the types of relationships that are built on trust. They're built on longevity, because ultimately you want your clients coming back to you over and over again. And there is no reason that every client that you work with, subject to them having a strong, viable business that will grow, should not be coming back to you over and over again. And again, if you were to survey brokers out there, they might say that they work on long-term relationships, but if you actually looked at their results, I'd bet my bottom dollar that more than 50% of the clients they work with do not come back to them for funding. So, you know, we focus on consultative value-driven relationships, and that's another key reason for niching. And I think the bottom line really is that niching enables you to become and be perceived as an expert to the businesses within your niche. And if you were your clients, you know, who would you prefer to work with, the expert or the generalist? And I think that can extend to anything in life. We always prefer the experts. So niching really just gives you this big competitive advantage when it comes to deal flow, but it also makes things a damn sight easier over time, right? So again, you know, this is what I kind of just said, but it's going to be harder to market to a broad market, right? So whether you like it or not, getting leads requires marketing skills and understanding of marketing. And the reality is marketing works because it addresses people's pains and problems. You know, business owners don't get funding because they want money. The money or the funding they get helps solve a specific problem they have with the business. And this goes back to what I said about, you know, transactional versus consultative relationships. You know, when you're niched, you're able to really understand the problems that the businesses within your niche commonly have. that in turn drive them to start seeking funding in the first place. And as I say, it's not because you get a lot of leads come in and they kind of give you the sort of default reasoning that they're looking for funding because they're growing, right? 99% of the time, that is not the reason. There's an underlying issue that they're looking for the funding for. So when you understand their problems in the same way that they do, it basically changes the conversation. It changes the conversation you have with them, because as human beings, we connect and we build relationships with people who think and talk the same way we do. We want that familiarity. We want to feel comfortable. So if we put this into the context of your clients, who would they rather talk with to get funding, right? The broker who can demonstrate that they really understand them and their problems, or the broker that can only talk about the funding that they can get them, So niching helps build trust and credibility, and that in turn helps build solid relationships with some depth to them. And you'll need that if you want to make a lot of money at this over time. And then the next thing is that you're going to have a very hard time scaling and growing a multi-market business. So again, the reason we're doing this, we're willing to put this work in right now to build this foundation so we can get to the 10K months. But you're going to want to scale it because you don't want to just keep churning out the wheel to make 10K months. And you can do that in an unniched market, but it's very hard to grow that further than that. And why wouldn't you want to do that further than that? And also work less time while scaling. So, when you work with a lot of different types of businesses, you can only really have, as I say, what I call these surface level conversations, these transactional relationships. And, in our world, a surface level conversation is the type that goes something like this, right? So, hey, I'm a broker and I provide funding to business owners. Do you want funding? No. Okay. So I've oversimplified this, right? But the point is that most of the prospects you're going to reach out to are going to say no. And when you get that no, you really have nowhere to go with developing that relationship any further. You really just have to move on to the next one because they've just shut you down, right? And you don't want to become a stalker. And even if they say yes, as I say, even if they are looking for funding, the conversation typically stays around the topic of getting funding. And that means it's transactional. You have no ability to develop something deeper. And it's not, actually, that's probably, that's misleading. You have an opportunity to develop something deeper. But most people in a transactional relationship are not thinking in that way. They're just looking to get the deal done. And that is definitely the wrong way to look at this. So it's very hard to scale a brokerage like this because you're always going to have to be cranking that wheel, looking for the next lead, the next deal that you can get funding. Versus, with a deeper relationship, let's just going to give you an example that, hey, I help roofing contractors access working capital, help with the cash flow problems they generally experience when storm season hits. Is this something I can help you with? Why, yes, as a matter of fact, you can. Now, again, oversimplifying this, but the point is, even if they said no, you can still open up the conversation because you've quickly shown that you know something about them and their business. And to be frank, most business owners with a brain are going to want to keep a contact like that to hand, even if they don't have a need currently, right? And so that opening sentence, now, I've oversimplified that. But the simple thing is you can see that opening sentence is vastly different to the, hey, do you want funding straplines? And again, you only got to look out online. You've only got to look in these different groups out there. So many people are doing this. There's no value add to that. There's no effort to even understand their target audience. And they wonder why they don't get any results. This is basically why that happens. Conversations ultimately build relationships. And when these people need funding, guess who they're going to turn to? So when you're niched, as I say, it changes the conversations. But the other thing is that, those conversations actually are generally pretty much always the same, because the problems in these businesses, if you're focused on one market, are generally always the same. So when you look at scaling, it's so much easier to do that when all you have to do is like a rinse repeat type of approach versus starting again every time you engage a new business owner and just having to keep cranking that wheel. So niching and scaling, therefore, is the path of least resistance. And again, I don't know about you, but if you're building a business and you want to maximize your income revenue, I'd rather take an easier path than the harder one. And again, I don't know why, but a lot of people like to take the harder one, but that's a good thing for us. And then the next thing is with niching, your conversion rates, your closing ratios, basically everything that you have going on is going to go up when you're niched. And it's connected to what I've already said, this trust and credibility, especially in this game as it grows and lots of people are getting into bad rates with MCAs, etc. It's huge, and it's going to become a big thing. So if your audience trust you, you have far more control of the outcome you want, which is basically getting the funding that they need. You know, they're less likely to want to work with multiple brokers. Now, there may already be some of you guys in this program now having experienced that, you know, and I've lost count of the times we speak to people that, you know, they're working on a deal, but the deal is also one that's being worked by other brokers. Like, what is the point of that? You know, they are much more likely, if you're niched, to have a solid business because you can choose the types of people that you interact with, and therefore they're going to have stronger FICOs. And again, all of this stuff just aids your closing ratios. So even if they initially didn't want funding, the fact that you know their challenges, it enables you to strike up this conversation and ultimately to plant those seeds for the future. And you know, me personally, I've lost count of the number of deals that I've got funded where a client initially said they didn't need funding, but by just taking that longer term approach and having that different type of conversation, I was able to plant the seed, I was able to nurture it. And if you do the same sort of thing over time, you know, those seeds, when they're nurtured, they can become big oak trees. So it's definitely the way to go forward. And then niching makes you infinitely more competitive than other brokers. And this is massive, guys. You know, niching your business down to a particular market, you're going to be perceived as the ideal solution when they need funding. You're going to be talking a very different language to that of your competitors, your clients' language, you know, not that of brokers. And this just makes you more competitive than other brokers because they don't have any unique selling proposition working for them. And this is the way to get business owners approaching you over time. This is powerful. This is when we talk about building this personal brand. You know, this is what this is all about. If we're talking their language, it's just natural that they're going to come to you. You're going to be like a magnet. So when they want funding, this is, you know, that you're the person they look at. And again, we only have to take a look around the market right now. How many brokers do you see doing and saying the same old stuff? Posting in groups with their flyers, we do funding, do you want any, all the same sort of stuff that just doesn't really work. So by niching, you've substantially shrunk the amount of competition that you have. You're no longer competing with everybody else. And the fact is they really can't compete with you because they don't really take the time to even understand what it is you're doing. And I don't know about you, but you know, if I'm going to be competing with somebody and I know that I can get a competitive advantage doing that, I'm going to take it. So again, as with everything else that we look to do, it's the path of least resistance. So the next thing that people always worry about is, what if I pick the wrong niche? And I totally understand this question because I actually personally struggled with it for a while myself. And the concern is that, you know, you don't want to go and pick this niche and then commit to it for an extremely long period of time and then realize that you've just wasted a bunch of time and energy on this niche. You're not actually going to make any money doing it. And it makes complete sense. But it's actually the most important thing to focus on. It's not actually the most important thing to focus on when you're selecting your niche. But bear with me. So the first thing that I guess the first thing to say here is you can't actually pick the wrong niche. With the way that we show you, certainly, you're always going to be able to make money in it, right? We have this process which we'll be showing you in this training on how to do that. So you can't really pick the wrong niche. And the only time a niche might be wrong is really, it's more of a case of if it doesn't personally resonate with you. You know, you don't feel that you have an affinity or passion for the niche itself. But again, with the way that we show you how to pick a niche, you're likely not going to start with a niche like that in the first place. So there really isn't a wrong niche. Okay. And then I guess the thing that really moves the needle on making a lot of money in a particular niche is just committing to solving problems, right? Any business is really at its simplest just a case of solving problems, good and bad. And whoever solves the most problems generally is the most successful. So, you know, we see this a lot. You know, you get people jumping into a niche, and one of the first things they start to notice are, I guess, all of the typical and common challenges or problems of that particular market. You know, no one's responding to me. I can't get anyone on the phone. Everyone keeps saying no thanks. You get the picture. Now, I remember when I first started contacting building companies back in the day, and I had a really hard time of getting hold of people because, you know, the companies that I first targeted were small contractors, and most of the day they were just out working on building sites doing their thing. You know, they weren't on LinkedIn, and certainly social media wasn't as it is today. And, you know, I tried a bunch of different channels that really weren't a good fit for this. Even though they were being told to me as this is the way you go and get hold of people. And I really struggled to figure this stuff out, in basically how to get hold of them. But then I realized that, you know, the problem that I had was actually an opportunity, because if I was experiencing this, then it was fair to say other brokers would be experiencing this. And I knew that most of them would just quit on it. You know, so it was an opportunity for me to separate myself from what the other brokers in the market were actually doing, who weren't willing or able to solve that problem. And this is where the training that we have around direct mailing and lumpy mail was actually born. I just kind of figured that, well, at that particular time, and this is still actually true today, no one really does direct mailing anymore, you know, other than just sending a rubbish flyer. But no one actually writes a letter, okay? So this is where that came about. I just figured that, well, that's a great way to get directly in front of the right people and get their attention. So I kind of figured out the solution, and for me, that actually started working. And this is in the training, by the way, guys. So it's definitely something I would advise looking at, and it's a great way to actually get in front of whales. So this is a great way to get the big deals coming in. So you don't want to look at, you know, these different challenges you encounter as a reason to think it's a bad niche or it's not going to work. You want to, it's a mindset thing, but you want to shift your perspective to look at these as problems, yes, but good problems to solve, you know, because they are opportunities. If you know that most of your competitors are not even going to bother solving that problem in the first place, then what you'll naturally do as you solve it is create a very strong competitive edge. And that's going to be another thing that we're going to be talking about in this training. And then, you know, this is a huge part of what I think most people forget. You're not actually picking a niche for life. You know, you're not being wedded to this thing forever. You're just picking this niche so that you can go out there and test it and see if you can build something profitable for yourself. So it's really, as I say, it's really more of a case of whether you like it or not, whether you have an affinity to that niche. Now, that said, we do recommend that you commit to a niche for a certain period of time. You know, you really don't want to place too much concern on picking the wrong niche, because, as I say, even if you spend a couple of months in it and decide it isn't the right niche for you, you're going to have gained what I call knowledge equity, just by going through the process of thoroughly testing everything like that. And you can never lose that knowledge. And all it means is it's going to make you sharper when you pick the next niche, right? And that really is because you don't know what you don't know. And it's often that lack of knowledge that you need to create the success you want. And that knowledge often comes with failure. So again, it's a mindset shift, but it's a case of looking at failure as a positive thing. Committing to these niches for a period of time, just so that you can say to yourself, I really don't have this affinity, and you're not letting the emotion of this, you know, these problems surfacing kind of guiding you to think, I don't like this niche, okay? Because these problems exist in every niche. The point is success comes through pushing through these challenges and getting through to the other side. And that's where you can leave your competitors behind. And, you know, if we think about it, all of these concerns we naturally have can really be categorized as fears. And again, fear is a natural thing, especially when we're about to start to do something that we haven't done before. It creates this uncertainty. It becomes emotional. And, you know, we all hate uncertainty. We're hardwired to need certainty as human beings. So, you know, the thing is, if we let that fear take hold, it will basically just cause paralysis. You're going to be spinning your wheels, looking to do anything other than what it is you need to be doing to get results. And maybe this is happening to you now, maybe this has happened to you in the past. And if it is, please make sure to reach out to me, right? I'm here to help and get you past this. But the best advice I can give you here is that you just need to trust the process that we are giving you. Do not doubt it or yourself. Just pick a niche and commit to it. And I mean, really commit to making it work for you. Do not overthink anything. Just do what we're suggesting you do in the training, and it will get your results, okay? So if you do that, you really won't go far wrong. And then the third thing that people really think about a lot when they go to choose a niche is that they don't know enough to be able to pick the right niche. So again, this is something that I definitely experienced this as well. You know, when you want to pick your first niche, you want to sort of, you're generally sort of earlier on in your career, and, you know, you're not sure exactly what niche is going to be right for you. And, you know, the odds are that you already know more than enough to select a niche at this particular point. And that's because you've lived a life, right? You've experienced something. So what we do with our process is we take what you know, we leverage the process, we teach you, and and basically you're generally going to come up with the right niche. Okay, so there's no real need to think about you don't know enough. You probably already do know enough. And even if you really don't know enough, okay, you can just research and learn. We have Google these days. There's lots of information out there. And just by going through that process, you're going to strike up an affinity to something, or you're going to realize actually you did know something. It just wasn't sort of at the forefront of your mind. And the research will just kind of just trigger that into action. So basically, don't worry. We've got you on this, and we'll show you how to do this research. And in doing so, you're going to naturally find these niches that you have this affinity with. And the third thing is that, you know, you're going to learn the most in the end by just getting on and doing it, right? Starting to follow the process and just getting in that market and trying to get some clients. And as soon as you start to work to get clients in the niche, you're going to have a much better understanding of as to, you know, whether or not you actually really like it. So even if you're unsure at the start, you think, well, I don't know, maybe not, just get on with it, right? Because as I always say, you don't know what you don't know until you know it. And there's no better way to know it than just to dive right in, okay? All right, so let's move on. And the other thing we're going to show you is obviously how to select this ideal niche. And this is really our proven process for finding these profitable niches that you can scale things in. And here are the things that at a high level, you're going to want to look for. So start to take notes here. Now, we've mentioned this before, but the first thing you want to look for is a niche you have some interest in. So give you some examples. It could be real estate because you like property, or maybe you've done a few fix and flips in your time. It might be restaurants because you love eating out, right? You love that experience of dining out. And you know, maybe you've owned one back in the day. Or it could be because you used to be a roofer or a dentist, or you love trucks. You know, it really doesn't matter your personal reasons for having an interest. What matters is that you have some level of interest, because if you pick a niche off, really just off a bunch of sort of unemotional profitability factors, and there's definitely something that's important, but if you have zero interest in it, you're going to find it incredibly hard to get traction and make money from it, because you will encounter resistance. These are the problems that we kind of talked about. You know, as you try and build out your brand and get leads flow, you're going to get these different problems. And this resistance, as I call it, it's a good thing because it makes you better. It sharpens you and turns you into the person that businesses in your niche will want to turn to when they need funding. You know, getting that resistance, having these problems, it's going to force you to ask different questions to try and solve them. You're going to build knowledge that you wouldn't normally build if you weren't asking those questions. And it helps you really understand how your market works and, you know, how the money runs through it. But without that interest, you're going to have no desire to learn, and it will become very boring and stale. And it will start to feel like, and we've all had them, you know, the jobs that we just hate, that we just detest going to. You know, that's what it will start to feel like. And your activity levels will just become unsustainable. You just won't get results out of it, right? So this is the reason why we do say, have some sort of interest to the niche that you're going to work in. And then you're going to want to look at, you know, niches that you can actually achieve results in. So whilst having that interest is definitely important, you also need to balance that with a niche that you can get these results in. So let's give you a simple example. You know, you might have been a cupcake maker back in the day and love everything about making cupcakes. But let's face it, you know, niching to cake making or cup making shops isn't going to get you very far. So after you've sort of shortlisted all of these niches out there that you have some sort of interest in, down to the ones that you're actually, you know, these are the ones I think I can do some work in and make some money in, you're going to want to look at the niches that you then can achieve the best types of results for. And the big things here are just to make sure that you can find a niche market that you know has products and services that are valued enough by their clients. And by that I mean ideally the businesses that sell high value products or services. So on the whole, the businesses that you're going to target are already going to be making over 200K a year, right? So what this means is that if we're targeting those types of established businesses, 80% of the reasons that deals don't get funded, we don't get involved in that, because these guys are going to demonstrate that they have, you know, transaction value every single month. They can demonstrate they're making this money consistently. But the other thing is as well, the value of the funding that these guys want generally is a lot higher than a lot of other brokers are getting into. So if we've got higher values, we get bigger commissions, and for the same amount of energy and work, you can make a lot more money. You know, and a lot of the time this can be 2-3 times as much as your average broker out there working unniched and just spinning their wheels. So you want to make sure that the market you're going in has that ability, that platform to be able to do that. And, you know, if say they do sell low value products, that's not necessarily a bad thing. But again, we still want to make sure they're selling in enough volume that the market is still going to have lots of businesses making over 200K a year. So to give you an example, if you're on LinkedIn, you're going to get tons of sort of one-man bands businesses. And this actually goes back to like when I started out, I worked with building contractors, and I initially started working with just people that had like 1 or 2 people in the company. Again, not that you can't get these people funding, but you got to work a lot harder to get them in volume to make any real material return on that time investment. So this bit's really important. And just to be clear, it's not that you can't make money in a niche that sells low value services or products, but generally you're going to get involved in these low revenue companies. It'll naturally start getting you involved in startups and all those types of things. And with all of that, you get all of the problems that low revenue companies have. A lack of consistency in revenue. They don't always have their financials together, right? So all of this stuff just really means you have to work a lot harder to get the deal funded. And if you're going to work harder to get a deal funded, you don't really want to do that and, you know, get paid out low commissions. I'd personally rather work hard and get paid a lot of money for doing so. So just make sure that you know, whilst yes, you need an interest in the market you're going for, that it has businesses that have generally over, you know, they're making over 200K a year. And then, you know, you don't want to have a niche where on the other side of it, there just aren't enough businesses in it really to achieve your goals in the first place. So if you've identified your goals properly and you know what it's going to take to achieve them, you're going to have to, you know, gain a certain number of clients in a short period of time to start hitting your revenue goals. And if there aren't enough businesses in the market to be able to hit those goals, well, you're going to waste a lot of time going into the market, right? You might get a few deals funded, but you're not going to be able to scale this thing consistently over time. So if you go after a market with, say, 200,000 businesses in it, it's really not going to be that hard to hit a small percentage of that market that need funding, and actually even build a huge business around it, like 1 or 2% of that market. Therefore, the number of businesses operating in a particular market is a massive factor in you being able to hit those consistent and scalable months of 10K plus. All right. So the key things there: need an interest in it. It does have to have enough businesses in it, but also enough businesses that are making, you know, they're established and they're making over, say, 200K a year. So you're going to want to look for these niche markets that are also easier to sell to, right? So, and that really is as simple as pick a niche you know is growing and there's a demand for it for finance. So real estate's a great example of this, but just by default, funding basically props up their business. So they're always going to need funding. So, you know, as long as you're understanding their problems in the right way, you understand the products, you know, it's not that hard to get into conversations. Construction or certain types of construction businesses are always very good for this, because as they grow, we mentioned roofing contractors as an example, as they grow, they generally need equipment to help sustain that growth. So again, it's not too difficult to get into these conversations so long as you are able to demonstrate you understand their business. Medical businesses, oil and gas businesses, you know, just if you think about the types of businesses there are out there, you know, there's tons where you can think, you know, finance is a key part of these people actually operating their businesses and making money. So the first thing that we're going to cover here are the niches to avoid, okay? Because, well, it's just going to make your life so much harder if you pick a niche that you can't really make money in. So I mentioned this before, but, you know, you're going to want to avoid the markets that have very low transaction value. Ideally, again, I say it's not, there are markets that have low transaction value that you can make money in, but on the whole, avoid those. And you're going to want to pick those ones that are easy to win. So I just mentioned this before. So just make sure you've got those sort of criteria lined out. But you don't want to work in niches that have small companies with low revenues. That's a very different thing. So whilst you'll get leads and you're going to get a lot of people even interested in that, this is generally the MCA market. This is where most of these people are out there. They're unniched and they're working MCAs, and it's a race to the bottom. You're just going to get a lot of problems with these types of businesses that need funding. This is where you pick up lots of startup deals, You're going to get loads of people wanting your help, but you're never really going to get these funded. So if you want to be busy being busy and doing what everyone else does, then that's the way to do it. But if you want to actually make some serious money, then do the things that we're suggesting here. And this one really is, it's self-explanatory, but you want to avoid the markets that are shrinking or dying. There are lots of markets out there, especially with the rate of technology, how that's advancing and that's changing, and it's shifting these markets. And so what it's creating is that, some of them are dying, some of them are shrinking because of that. And then there are also those markets that are being hit by trade wars or recession. So two active markets that are actually typically very buoyant, have been very good for brokers over the years, have been agriculture and trucking. So again, it's not that you can't make money in these markets right now, but they are being hit by trade wars and they are being heavily hit by recession. So what that does sort of spins off is that you might even have a viable business that can get funding, but then the lenders also are not as willing to get involved in those kind of things. So again, it's not that you can't make money there, but if you're looking to scale, when you're looking for the path of least resistance, it's better to avoid those types of markets right now. But as I say, trucking and agriculture, they were very big, and they will be very big again in the future. So if they are of interest, it's not that you don't get involved in them, but just keep an eye on them. So when they are starting to turn, and we all, it's easy to go on Google and just keep abreast of things. You could be one of the first people to get back into that and then turn it into another new niche for you. Okay. So with all of that stuff being said, hopefully that's been of help. I want to get in now to the specifics of how to select your niche. Okay, guys, so hopefully you found the beginning of our niche selection training of interest and there's some help. Obviously, we can't give you the full step-by-step guide. That's available to all of our affiliates in the program. But the main purpose of this was really just to explain why it's important to niche down if you want to be hitting 10K plus months. If you have any more questions about this, there's a link below this video. Please click that to schedule a call directly with me. I'm happy to help and advise in any way I can. And obviously, if you have questions about the affiliate program, we can go into some detail there. And I'll even just show you everything, show you what the other guys are doing, the training, everything that you need to know to be able to make a decision as to whether this is the right thing for you. And the final thing to say, guys, is if you found this video of interest, please do like this video and subscribe to our channel. We're producing content weekly. Our personal aim is to really just dispel a lot of the myths in this industry and help those people that are struggling to make money consistently with the right type of advice and the methods and the systems that can enable you to do that. Thanks for listening.